You're listening to the Third Down Squad podcast, the best international news podcast for the National Football League. We're your hosts, Derek, Josh, and Toby. Let's get you ready for new set downs on Sunday.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Third Down Squad podcast. As you can see, Toby and I are the only ones here right now. We're having difficulties getting a hold of Josh right now, but hopefully he'll be joining the podcast here soon. If not, the show must go on. And as you can tell, Toby's rocking the custom-made Patrick Mahomes jersey in honor of the fact that we're going to be doing the AFC West rankings today. And before we get into the AFC West rankings for ourselves, we have a couple of players that we want to talk about first. And a couple of them had some issues basically involving fights over the last couple weeks. And the first one we're going to talk about is Zeke. Now, we obviously had already talked about how Zeke had gotten into a fight with a security guard at Las Vegas at a festival, and how no charges were brought up. And he had a meeting with the NFL earlier this week talking about it. And it was being reported just now before the podcast started that Zeke will not be facing any punishment from the NFL. Now, the Dallas Cowboys can obviously still punish him if they feel that he deserves it, but I highly doubt that they would do such a thing if the NFL says he doesn't need to. So, Toby, we've seen the NFL be lenient on some things. We've seen them be tough on Zeke for things that might not have been true. I mean, whose side are you on here? Do you think that the NFL made the right decision to not suspend Zeke Elliott?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago already, and I think I said it back then that the incident wasn't that big of a deal. It was not like he really hit the security guard or anything. It was just a little shoving and verbal altercation, I believe. The only thing is maybe where I could say, okay, the league might give him a fine for is that he isn't that kind of a role model for younger kids out there, which maybe the NFL should look out for a little bit. But I don't believe after all the other incidents that we had in the past, and I mean, it's like we're talking every other week about another incident involving any kind of violence or a fight on this podcast. So that incident is really minor. Like I said, maybe a fine, but no consequences here for Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, I'm fine with that as well. It wasn't that big of a deal. So yeah, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think it was a good idea for the NFL to not suspend him. I think that this time, I think this one actually kind of got to Zeke a little bit. I think he might have actually learned his lesson this time. We'll have to see if that ends up being the case. Obviously, he's got more time to make up for, but ultimately, yeah, I think this was kind of what was expected. We kind of all said before that we don't expect him to get too much of a suspension, if any. So it was kind of up in the air at that point, depending on what evidence was brought out. But apparently, all it was what Toby said, just a little bit of shoving and arguing. But other than that, it wasn't too much else. And now we move on to the other player that was mentioned, and that is Kareem Hunt. Now, obviously, we all know the scenario with him about being suspended for part of next season as well. Well, maybe Kareem Hunt might be getting himself a separate suspension as well, because there was reports that he was involved in an altercation at a bar in Cleveland last weekend. Too many of the details are still not out yet. It just depends on what the police bring out, but apparently he did get into it with a couple of guys. So, Toby, at this point, I'm not sure where to begin with Kareem Hunt at this point. I mean, what do you make of Kareem Hunt having another issue?
I mean, we already said that after his, well, let's call it apology video, He wasn't really apologetic about anything. So I didn't really feel like he learned anything of his incident in the hotel in Cleveland. And I mean, there was another video out there when the whole hotel incident came up, where he had an altercation in another bar or club, where I believe he broke somebody's arm. Something like that came up as well.
Yeah, so
And
that one.
and yeah, now we have another altercation at a bar in Cleveland as well, which, I mean, like you said, we don't really have any details about it. And I believe I read some reports this week if that it is not really sure if Kareem Hunt was actually the guy in the fight or not. So, but I believe some evidence came up that it was actually Kareem Hunt after all. So, uh, I mean, yeah, it's tough to judge because, like you said, yeah, we don't have the full story about it. But if it was really a big fight again, I mean, what else can you do then, given another suspension in the NFL? I mean, after all that, I don't know, it's just suspend him the entire year, something like that, or maybe the
Probably.
Cleveland Browns should take actions right now and kind of cut him before the season starts, not making him a player on their 53-man roster to start the season or something like that. It just doesn't look good when you have three different fights within a year, or not even a year. It just doesn't look good. And I mean, like I said, these players are supposed to be role models for kids out there that want to play the sport, and not show them when you're a star in sports you just can do anything. It's just not a good look that what Kareem Hunt does right now.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing that I said last week about Zeke. I'll say the exact same thing, dude. You just gotta stop putting yourselves in that situation. Listen, if and the thing is his isn't really an alcohol problem. I think it's more of a just a common sense of getting away from trouble kind of thing. Because listen, wherever you go, wherever he goes now, I mean, he was a football player to begin with. You're gonna have hecklers out there, whoever the heck it is, and people are. Let's admit it, people are idiots when they're at bars. It doesn't matter who you are or how good of a person is. Somebody gets drunk and decides to be stupid. Somebody's gonna call you a name or something else, or try to fight you. And I mean, you can't just fight everybody who gets in your face. I'm sorry, that just doesn't happen. And now you have that issue with the woman. Now that issue will follow you wherever you go. It doesn't matter if you're in Cleveland, who might be one of the most forgiving fan bases to allow him to stay. There are still going to be those hecklers there that are going to want to make his life hell. I mean, listen, dude, you just got to get away from these situations. Now, if, like you said, if that wasn't actually him in that, I think it was the police confirmed that it was him. But even if it wasn't, I mean, you have to. If it was him and it's true what was going on, that he got into this altercation, dude, you just got to stop, dude. And if you need if you need counseling to figure out how to control your anger, then please do, because it's starting to look like you need counseling at this point, because you just seem to keep getting in these altercations with people that for no good reason whatsoever. What is the best excuse that you could have for punching a guy at a bar? Seriously, what is the best excuse you can come up with? There isn't one. So, and this is kind of what we said, like you said, Toby, this is kind of how we all have been talking about. Kareem Hunt probably didn't learn his lesson. Just because he came out with a apology doesn't necessarily mean that he actually felt remorse for what he did, because we haven't seen it yet. And apparently, if it's true that he keeps getting into these fights, that I don't really think he's truly learned his lesson. So again, what a waste just to have to, you know, get your reputation taunted like that for being such a good football player, to have your reputation completely taunted like that. But I don't know, man. Well, I guess we'll just have to see
Yeah.
what happens down the line. All right, now we're gonna move on to our AFC West predictions. This one ought to be great fun here. I can't wait to see what Toby has for me. All right, Toby, why don't you go ahead and start with the Denver Broncos?
All right, the Denver Broncos. Coming out with definitely a new quarterback this season. Either it's gonna be Drew Lock or Joe Flacco. I'm definitely curious to see who's gonna start the season for them. Cause I mean, I hope it's gonna be Drew Lock. I'm not that high on Joe Flacco. I made that pretty clear uh over the past couple of months on this podcast. Um but in my opinion, they're starting their season off against Oakland. They're gonna win their first game even with a new quarterback at Oakland to start of the season. So good start for them. But then they have a tough stretch of a couple of games against some good teams there. First one, they're hosting the Chicago Bears, which they will lose, so they're going 1-1 after 2 weeks. Then they travel to Lambeau Field against the Packers, going 1-2. Then they host the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going 1-3. They're going to the LA Chargers. I have them going 1-4 after 5 weeks of the season. After the Chargers, they are hosting the Tennessee Titans. Sorry, Seth, but the Denver Broncos will win that game. 2-4 for the Broncos. Next up against Kansas City at home, Mile High Stadium. Another loss for the Denver Broncos. 2-5. Then they're traveling to Indianapolis, which they will also lose there, going to a record of 2-6, and they will host Cleveland at home the week before their bye, which they will enter at a record of 2-7. Coming out at the bye week, they will travel to Minnesota, another loss for them, record of 2-8. Then they will travel to Buffalo, a record of 3-8. They win up north against Buffalo. Then they host the LA Chargers, another loss. I believe it's 3-9 by then. At the Houston Texans, another loss for them, 3-11, or no, 3-10. Sorry. At the Kansas City Chiefs, another loss for them. Now it's 3-11. Versus the Detroit Lions, they will lose that game as well. I have the Lions win that one of the few wins I have for the Lions this year. Record of 3-12, and with the last game closing out the season against Oakland with a win there for a total record of 4-12.
Well, you and I have the same record. I'm actually glad that I'm not the only one who thinks that the Broncos are going to struggle. Although I didn't have the same wins and losses you did. So here's the thing. The Broncos are completely new on offense this year. Besides Philip Lindsay, that's pretty much their only guaranteed good offensive threat at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, they still got Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, but their secondary is going to be a little bit shot this year. We'll find out how good they are defensively, but week one, I have them losing to the Raiders, actually. I have them losing that game. Then they will lose against the Bears. They will lose against the Packers, and then they will lose to the Jaguars, going 0-4 to start the season. And then I have them actually winning against the Chargers at Los Angeles. I think that I can't remember. It was 2 years ago, I think. I think it was 2 years ago. Josh predicted a Denver Chargers win, or it might have been last year. Denver upset the Chargers coming from behind, and I was at a movie theater. He was like, I told you," and I was so mad because I was like, I think I had the Chargers defense.
Yeah, I think that was last year. I think that was one of our
last year because it was
one of
when we
our
were doing
predictions.
that.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was so bad. I did not like that I had to listen to him the whole week. But anyway, they'll be 1-4 through week 5. I have them losing to the Titans. Seth, I love you. Okay. So I'm giving your Titans some love there. 1-5. They will lose to the Chiefs. 1-6. They will lose to the Colts. 1-7, and they will lose to the Browns, being 1-8 before their bye week. Then they will go to Minnesota. They'll lose. They'll be 1-9. I have them beating the Bills as well, going 2-9. I have them then losing to the Chargers, 3-9. I have them losing to the Texans and the Chiefs, which will make them 3-12. Then I have them winning wait a minute. No, it's 2-12.
Or
2-13. Yeah, 2-13. Yeah, I messed that one up. And then I have them winning their last 2 games, making them with a combined record as well of 4-12. So Toby and I have the same things there. A few different wins, but other than that, we both agree that the Broncos are a long way to go still. All right, so go ahead with your Chiefs predictions.
All right, the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them. What was the record last year? 13-3 or 14?
It was 13-3.
13-3. Yeah. So I have them dropping off a little bit this year. But yeah, starting off the season at the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're starting off with a win. At the Oakland Raiders, another win, 2-0. At home against Baltimore with another win, 3-0. At Detroit, next win, 4-0. Then their first actual test, I believe, this season comes in Week 5 against the Indianapolis Colts, which will hand them their first loss of the season, going 4-1. Next game against Houston, I have them lose that one as well. Them having a record of 4-2. Then I actually just see on my list that I messed that up somewhere because I have them here losing against the Denver Broncos, but as I just said, the Kansas City Chiefs will beat the Broncos at Denver, so they're going 5-2. Then they go to the Green Bay Packers. They win this, they host the Green Bay Packers. Sorry, they will win that game as well. So they go 6-2. They will host the Minnesota Vikings the week after that, going 7-2. Wow, it's really difficult to do that in my head with the wrong record against the Broncos in there. That is Jesus. The week after that, they're going to the Tennessee Titans. Again, another loss for the Titans. Kansas City Chiefs win that as well. I'm not going to do the record anymore. I just can't keep up in my head. At the LA Chargers, the Mexico game, I hope they can actually play that game this year before the bye week for the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them losing that game against the LA Chargers. After the bye week, they will win against Oakland. They will win at New England. They will win against the Denver Broncos. They will win at Chicago. And they will win against the LA Chargers, which actually will not drop them to a record of 12-4 like I have here with the wrong Denver prediction. They will actually stay with the same record as last year with 13-3.
Well, I'm glad that I thought I was being generous with their record, but apparently not. Yeah, I mean their schedule's kind of difficult at the mid part of the season and even at the very end, but in some places. But I think that if what I'm hearing is that Tyreek Hill's only going to miss 4 games, that is going to be perfect for them if they get him back before that time, because that gives them perfect opportunity to play in the games against the Colts and the Texans. But here's the thing. I have the Kansas City Chiefs not losing a single game until Week 8. They will go 7 straight, beating the Jaguars, the Raiders, Ravens, Lions, Colts, Texans, and then the Broncos. And then they will lose at Lambeau Field against Green Bay, and that'll put them at 7-1. They will beat the Vikings and then the Titans, putting them at 9-1. And then they will lose to the Chargers at 9-2 going into their bye week. They will win against the Raiders, putting them at 10-2. They will lose to the Patriots, going 10-3. They will win to the Broncos, going 11-3. They will lose to the Bears, going 11-4, and then they will win against the Chargers, putting them at 12-4 at the end of the season. So you and I did have them pretty close, but
All
I
right,
was
yeah.
honestly, I thought I would be higher. But then again, everything always makes me happy. All right, we're gonna move on here to the Los Angeles Chargers, and I will start this one off.
All right, yeah.
Like I said, I'm sorry to all the Colts fans out there, including myself. I really do not want to put this as a win, but I am going to. The Chargers will win Week 1 against the Colts. They will win at the Detroit, and they will be 2-0. I have them losing to the Texans, going 2-1. I have them winning against the Dolphins, going 3-1. They will lose to the Broncos, like I mentioned earlier, the upset, be 3-2. They will win 4 straight, making them 7-2. Then they will lose to the Raiders the one time that they do. They will be 7-3. They will beat the Chiefs, and then that will put them at 8-3. We're going into their bye week, same bye week as the Chiefs. And then they will win every game up until that point until they lose against the Chiefs in Week 17, which puts them also at a record of 12-4, contending with the Chiefs.
All right. Okay, so again, a split division for you there, with the same record for the Chiefs and Chargers as we have seen last year. Interesting. And we already did the Colts predictions, and I have the Colts winning their first game, so the Chargers will lose that game. But then the Chargers are going on a massive win streak for me, up until the last week of the season, so 14 wins straight.
No way.
So they will lose their first and their last game this season, one against Indianapolis and one at the Kansas City Chiefs, and the final record for me is 14-2.
What? 14-2, jeez. Toby's dropping the 14-2 bombs this year, y'all. That's his second one. The Colts and the Chargers. Holy cow! If your name of your team starts with a C, you're in luck because Toby's giving y'all mad love over here. Holy cow! So then that means that you're assuming that the Chargers are going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and then
no, it's actually gonna be the Colts are gonna be the number 1 seed in the AFC since they are beating the Chargers in Week 1.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. And then the Chargers would be the second one.
Yeah.
And then the Chiefs would end up being the 5 seed. Cow. And then the Browns would be and then Browns would be 3rd. Holy cow. That's crazy. All right. Well, enough of the craziness there. Let's go to everybody's favorite team, the Oakland Raiders. I've been personally cannot wait for this one. I'm going to give you all mine first just because I want to hear Toby's last because I have a strong feeling that Toby's going to give them less than 3 wins. Let's see what happens here. So I mentioned with the Broncos Week 1, I had them the Broncos losing, so I had the Raiders going 1-0 to start the season. Oakland fans, be as happy as you want to be then. That's the best you're going to get, okay? And then they are going to lose to the Chiefs, and then they will win against the Vikings on the road, advancing to 2-1. They will lose to the Colts, then lose to the Bears going into their bye week, putting them at 2-3. And then they will lose their next 2 against the Packers and the Texans, making them 2-5. And then they will win 3 straight. They will win against the Lions, the Chargers, and the Bengals, putting them at 5-5 after that. And then going into after that, they will lose every game up until that point. They will lose against the Jets, the Chiefs, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Chargers, and then the Broncos again. So I have them finishing with a final record of 5-11. Toby, I've been waiting all week for this one. Go ahead.
All right. So the last season for the Raiders in Oakland before they leave to Las Vegas. All right, next year's draft is gonna be in Las Vegas. The Raiders are gonna bring a present. I'm just gonna say, number 1 overall pick for next year's Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, jeez, no way. Really? What?
All right.
Wait a minute. Didn't you put the Bengals at like 3-13? Are you seriously gonna put the right, folks, we're in for a treat here. Please explain, Toby.
All right. Yeah, we had some technical difficulties right there. Sorry for that. But as I said, the Oakland Raiders will have the first overall pick next season. Maybe if Josh's prediction from last week with the NFC South is going to come true, we'll have a battle for it. But right now we have the second perfect season prediction in our podcast history.
No.
And the Oakland Raiders, in my opinion, will finish this season with the wonderful record of an 0-6 season.
Okay.
0-16,
Let me ask here because, I mean, you have to explain to me why it is with the talent that the Raiders have on that roster right now, why it is that they will go 0-16. Please explain that to me. Because I can understand the which team was it that Josh had at 0-16? What was
The
that?
Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which,
Okay, I
to
can
be
understand
honest,
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
they have a good roster as well. But I believe, first of all, their additions at wide receiver, they are not that big a deal as anybody makes them out. Yes, Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams are big names in the NFL and are good receivers. The problem is how the Chiefs, under their new head coach in Gruden last year, were using their wide receivers and what their game plan was with Derek Carr and the wide receivers. It's more of a tight end based receiving game from the scheme. And they lost Jared Cook to the Saints, of course, this offseason, which does not really help them. Yeah, they have a new running back in Josh Jacobs, who was the best running back available this year in the draft. But I don't believe behind the O-line that the Oakland Raiders have, which is a good offensive line, which is, I would rank them kind of mid-tier in the NFL right now. But for a rookie running back, even a running back coming out of Alabama, he's not gonna be able to have the gaps in the game that he can produce that much in the running game in his first season in the NFL, kind of adapting to the speed of the game, especially against teams like the Denver Broncos, who have a good run defense, which the front seven that they have. The Kansas City have gotten a couple of good guys against the run this year as well in their defense, and of course the LA Chargers have a phenomenal defense in front there. So it's going to be tough in at least 6 games against the division there, and they have a couple of other teams with good run defenses there as well. And like I said, I don't think the passing game is going to be too much of a trouble. I mean, we have seen Jordy Nelson last year going to the Raiders, and yeah, he was kind of declining in Green Bay as well a little bit, but I kind of see or predict a little bit of the same for Antonio Brown this year. Yeah, he's still a big name, but he had a great quarterback in Pittsburgh and was, for most part of his career, the number one guy in the receiving game there. And now he's going to Derek Carr, who really only had one season where he looked like a great quarterback. And after that,
Wow.
it didn't really look like Derek Carr was much of a thrower anyway.
So the Raiders won't beat the Broncos at all.
No, they will not
No
beat the
chance.
Broncos. No, just
Okay, what
it's
about the
gonna be
Lions? What about the Lions? Of all teams, the
no,
Lions.
not even the Lions. I believe they might have a chance to keep them low with a better defense that they have this year, but I don't think the Raiders will put up enough points to beat any of these teams.
Okay, and the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals of all teams.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough one, but still, they have an offense in Joe Mixon. They have AJ Green. I hope they are still healthy. Then I believe they have. If you put up at least 20 points against the Raiders this year, which I believe the Cincinnati Bengals can, I believe the Raiders will not have a chance with the offense that they got.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. The Raiders and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from Toby and Josh's side have collided here a little bit. We're gonna see if that's actually true. Remind me again. When was the team? We know Cleveland went 0-16. We know that Detroit went 0-16 a couple years before that. Only a handful of times have we ever seen the teams go 0-16, and it sounds like Toby's putting it a lot more on John Gruden than a lot of people would. I guess we're going to find out just how good. A lot of people say, look at the talent on this roster. The Oakland Raiders are actually a decent team when you put them on paper. But you're right. It's kind of one of those things where I felt Oakland could have won a bunch more games last year had they had a better game plan going into a lot of games. Maybe we find out that John Gruden really isn't the mastermind that Oakland thought he was. Or maybe he might be. We don't know. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. It was a little podcast for you, obviously, because we did not have Josh here. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at T3DS_NFL. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and follow us and listen on Spotify. And as always, guys, peace.
See ya.